Rising prices at the market, the local availability of jobs, and the shifting value of a currency against the dollar are all individual signs of a much larger system. Each of these moments reflects the overall movement of national wealth. This factory represents gross domestic product, or GDP. It measures the total value of all goods and services produced within a country's borders. It is the core indicator of economic performance, tracking everything from consumption and investment to the overall standard of living. The output of this factory depends on three primary inputs: inflation, unemployment, and the exchange rate. As these variables fluctuate, they dictate the speed and volume of the goods and services hitting the economy. Because GDP acts as the ultimate scorecard for a nation's wealth and health, the field of macroeconomics focuses on calibrating these three variables to maintain stable growth. Inflation is the first dial. It is the rate at which the general level of prices rises, causing the purchasing power of your currency to fall. While it sounds counterintuitive, a stable, moderate level of inflation keeps the economic engine running smoothly. When inflation is moderate, people and businesses often spend or invest their money to stay ahead of rising prices. It also reduces the real value of debt, making it easier for borrowers to repay loans. But when that dial spikes into high, unpredictable inflation, businesses struggle to plan and consumer purchasing power erodes. If the temperature drops into deflation, spending often stalls as consumers wait for prices to fall even further. Unemployment triggers its own chain reaction. When people are unable to find work, they lose income, leading to an immediate drop in consumer spending. With lower overall production and fewer earners, tax revenues decline. This restricts the government's ability to fund the infrastructure and education needed for future growth. During economic downturns, less efficient businesses often close, which frees up labor and capital. As these workers and resources eventually move into more productive industries, the economy can reorganize itself around more efficient sectors, potentially leading to stronger long-term growth. Managing these variables is a structural balancing act. Forcing variables like inflation or unemployment toward absolute zero can be just as disruptive as allowing them to reach extreme highs. The exchange rate represents the value of one currency, like the Ghanaian cedi, measured against another. While a strong currency is often viewed as a symbol of status, a weak currency carries specific strategic advantages for trade. When a domestic currency is weak, locally produced goods, like these sacks of cocoa, become cheaper for foreign buyers. This increases export volumes, makes the country a more affordable destination for tourists, and encourages local production as expensive imports become less attractive. The trade-off for a weak currency is imported inflation, as goods from abroad become more expensive for local citizens. A strong currency does the opposite. It lowers the cost of imports and increases consumer purchasing power, but it also makes domestic exports more expensive and less competitive globally. Exchange rate policy requires choosing a deliberate trade-off between the competitiveness of local producers and the purchasing power of local consumers. Governments and central banks use a specific set of tools called control policies to stabilize the GDP machine and manage these fluctuations. Monetary policy is managed by the central bank. To fight a recession, they use an expansionary policy, lowering interest rates and increasing the money supply to stimulate activity. To combat inflation, they use a contractionary policy, raising interest rates and decreasing the money supply to slow things down. Fiscal policy is implemented by the government through taxation and spending. During a recession, they use expansionary fiscal policy by increasing government spending or decreasing taxes. To reduce inflation, they use contractionary fiscal policy by cutting spending or increasing taxes. Additional mechanisms include exchange rate policies that manage currency value, trade policies like tariffs and quotas, and income policies aimed at managing wage and price levels. Let's test this. If an economy is facing high inflation, which specific monetary and fiscal policies are required? Pause and consider your answer. To cool down the economy, you need contractionary monetary policy, raising interest rates, and contractionary fiscal policy, reducing government spending or increasing taxes. A healthy economy requires continuous monitoring. By deploying these control policies in sync, nations can absorb the shocks of inflation, unemployment, and currency fluctuations to maintain sustainable GDP growth.